All right, you guys, thanks so much for tuning in to the channel today. Gonna do a video, gonna do something we haven't done before. We're gonna bring on a guest from a channel that you guys are very familiar with if you're following the Montreal Canadiens online. And if you're not familiar with these guys, what the heck's the matter with you? No, I'm just kidding. Anyways, we really want to bring on somebody that has been growing his channel, covering the Montreal Canadiens, along with his partner in crime, Cedric. And if you haven't heard of these guys before, well, let's show you a clip of what they have done and established here in Montreal. Just give it, let's just roll it right here.
Une parenthèse à gauche, une parenthèse à droite pour qui? Raphaël Harvey
That is a scene from outside the Bell Center where you will find Habs Fan TV. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's bring him on. Alex himself from Habs Fan TV. Thank you so much for coming on today, my friend.
Well, thank you so much for that intro. Thank you for the praise. I really appreciate it. And yeah, that's a typical night outside the Bell Center. You got it all right.
Well, that's kind of, to me, like, I don't know if Denique knows it, but like, was that moment for you guys, that Harvey Pinard dance, was that kind of like sort of an establishing moment for you guys?
I would say there was a few establishing. Every time I think there's an establishing moment, there's another one that comes up. So I would say, initially that Kirby Doc dance really took off with a lot of people. I'd have to say, like, I think that's like the dance that like a lot of people will run into Danik and say, "Oh my God, where's the Kirby Doc? Where's the?" And that's how it really started. But I can't say honestly the establishing moments. There's been, depending on what you watch on TikTok and Instagram, there's different establishing moments for different people. So people that aren't really into hockey, well, they'll know us because we did an interview with someone from Occupation Double. And if you're someone that watches hockey, well, you'll know because we're outside every single game, So it's really cool to see that like people are recognizing us from different platforms and which videos they're associating the most. But obviously Harvey Pinard and then him seeing the dance, like it's a huge moment.
Yeah, which perfect segue, Alex, because I also have that clip where Denique, and let me just, before I even play it here, and you know what? Actually, I'm changing my mind on the fly. I do this a lot, Alex. If you ever watch my interviews, I just kind of roll with it. But I'm going to play it. So I'm going to play this clip. So Denique, who is the Habs Fan TV super fan and has become one of their biggest supporters, actually got to do that dance in front of Raphael Harvey Pinard. So let's show it to you here, guys.
Yeah, that was pretty epic.
Like, what a legend he's become, right?
yeah, no, exactly. Like I think Harvey Pinard, like they've spoken a few times too, so he's really enjoying it. Like imagine you start in the Laval Rocket, and now you've got a guy outside the Bell Center doing a dance in honor of you. That's pretty sick. That is pretty sick. He's living the dream.
Like, did Denique kind of create that on the fly? It seems like it was organic to me. That just kind of come out of him, or what?
Yeah, when I promise you, and I'm going to say this because some people will say, "Oh, this must be staged." I promise you, I could not stage this. I promise you, a dance where the guy is going on his knees in the slush to do a dance for Harvey Pinard, you couldn't even stage it if you wanted to. So, it just comes from him, I like to just leave everything happen organically. Like everything it's more of an improv thing at this point. Like people come up to you and you see what happens. I don't really have a script. I have some questions I'd have in mind to ask people. Would Danik the same thing too? But after that, sometimes I just give them the microphone. I'm like, this is your show.
Yeah, and I think that's where people like that want to create content for anything really. When you make it about the audience and you involve the audience, that's what helps you build your following, right? Because people actually see that you see value in them.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, listen, all the people that have worked on our channel so far have been people who used to watch the channel, people who showed up. Like there's Cedric who showed up at the draft and he said a few funny things and he got up put on Sportsnet too, and I decided to give him a shot. And same thing with Victoria. She's the girl that said that was talking about Jacques Alain in a more or less nice manner there, but it was funny and it was well said. So you know, I think that's how we're planning to grow our brand, is by involving the fans that have supported us from day one.
Well, it seems like, and for those again that aren't clear on exactly what Habs Fan TV does, they are outside the Bell Center after pretty well every home game, correct?
Every home game.
Every
That's
home
we
game.
succeeded, even the preseason games this year.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I mean, these guys will be out there, and that's the thing about Montreal fans, is that right from the preseason, we want to see our prospects, we want to see our draft picks first. Like, so those games matter, right? So you're out there, getting content from fans and feedback and everything. And when did you really get the sense that it was gonna start to continue to grow for you guys after each game at the Bell Center, more and more people showing up? Like, what was it that gave you the signal, like, okay, we could be onto something here?
Um, I'd have to say, um, look, so this channel technically has started since 2021, 2022. I started it after the playoffs. I've had this idea actually for many, many years, for I'd say 4 or 5 years, but this was before TikTok was around. This was before Reels were around. So I don't know how it would have worked, but now when it after that Stanley Cup playoff run, I took a look at everything and I was like, imagine there was someone out there after every playoff game that went to interview fans and you got instant fan reaction. Because what you get typically from, rights holder media is, pretty much analysis from players, and you don't really get much involvement from the fans. And I found that disappointing to a certain extent, because this was like the Canadiens had been waiting to get to the Stanley Cup final since like forever, since '93. So
Yep.
um, the fact that there wasn't someone there that was dedicated, that was doing it, I was always like, well, someone should have started it already. And then eventually it came upon to me, well, it's about time I started, because I've had this idea for a while. So I did the first year. I didn't do every single game because I ended up studying in Toronto for a few months. Um, and then when the next season started, what I started to realize is that we had already built like a decent amount of following, I think, like on different social media platforms, like 10, 20,000, that like a few people would come up to us, but, we still had to go get our interviews and everything. But I think what really hit me, I think it was around the 30th game. I think it was Anaheim Ducks. I think like we had like around 100 people, like just like 50 people maybe, like just surround and like make noise and like, sing with Danik and everything. And I kind of looked at it and I was like, I think we've created something special here. And ever since, like, the crowds that have amassed outside, there could be like 100 to 150 people that are around that video. You only see, the first few people in the front, but it's loud. It's really, really loud. Like when we were at the Laval Rocket, there were people in their apartments that were filming from outside, and you could just see like the huge crowd. And you could hear us from like distances away. People heard us from the parking. People heard us when they were getting a burger. Like it's. I think it's pretty impressive.
It's pretty neat, man. I mean, like, I think I saw a shot of outside of the Bell Center, or I think it was because somebody had an overhead shot, and you saw the crowds, how big the crowd actually was, and it really is the most involved I think fans can be, especially those that are attending games at the Bell Center. And you never know who's coming out of that building after a game, right? Isn't that kind of exciting to know that?
Yeah, you never know. It could be a former player. It could be a player. It could be literally anyone. So I think that's the beauty of it. Like when you come outside, you don't know what you're gonna get. Like, and at the end of the day, it's just a sampling of the people that want to come and talk. Whereas I think soon enough we'll get a bigger sampling of the Habs community, and I think it's good. It's just you're going to get a lot of different opinions. Like I like to post opinions that even I don't agree about on the channel. I find it very important to do so, especially if like it's well reasoned and everything. Um, But I think that's what fans have been waiting to see. I think fans have been waiting to have their voices heard, and in some way, shape, or form, they have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, there's so many different personalities that come out, and like that's why you never know what you're gonna get. It's like Forrest Gump, like life is like a box of chocolates, right? Like you just
Literally, literally. Like you can't really predict the content. You can only predict the questions that you want to ask and how you want to ask them, but you can't really predict what's going to be said. So it's cool.
So you're a lifelong Montreal Canadiens fan now. I've been seeing Cedric on Sportsnet after the Habs score a goal. They just go right to him now. I think he's a regular now, right? So
Well, listen, it's by design, I would say, because he kind of figured out where the Sportsnet guys like to point to after goals. So let's just say he likes to place himself there, and let's say that the camera guys see the value in putting him after the goal.
yeah, he makes sure to be like celebrating a Stanley Cup goal every time they go on him, no matter what.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly. Trust
Which
me,
is
he
great.
loves the camera. He
Which is
loves the camera.
I see that, yeah. Because you guys, I was just trying to think of in terms of you mentioned how you found Cedric and everything, but he's his role is interesting because he likes to kind of troll a little bit, right? Like in terms of like trying to have some fun with other fan bases, right? He's not shy about it.
No, no, for sure. Like especially putting on those other damn jerseys. Like honestly, the only reason that happened was we were in California, and we were trying to get interviews with other teams' players. Like in San Jose, in LA. So he's a huge he collects lots of jerseys and everything. So he's like, I'll wear the opposing team jersey. That way they'll feel comfortable to talk to us in the first place, instead of us wearing like Habs jerseys.
Right.
And then like, we'll have some form of interaction. But then we ended up going straight from there to the games most of the time. So he's like, well, I'll put my Habs jersey over it, and if the other team scores, well, I'll turn it up. I'll turn it up with them and see what happens. That way we don't get beat up. But I mean, California, come on, we're not going to get beat up there.
Yeah.
But then you saw Pizzetta react to it. That was pretty insane. Like that was the most like shock I ever had in my life. When he said those words, he's like, "You guys have the wrong jersey." I was the most confused I ever was in my life. And then the fact that he was watching and he saw it, I think it was pretty special. And I think it just confirmed to me what I think we already knew. I think the players they take a look at our stuff.
That's awesome. That's amazing, man.
Yeah.
Like how gratifying is that to know that the guys you support and cheer for day in and day out are actually giving you guys the time of day, and they were, and Pizzetta, a lot of the guys signed autographs. Then you guys gave out pictures to fans
Yeah.
and recorded that. That's one of your most recent videos, which is pretty great. So how was that experience for you guys to be able to give back also and make other fans happy doing what you're doing?
I think that's the most important thing for me. Like, I don't think I even kept a single signature for myself. Like, I really couldn't care less. When we went to California, we just wanted to find a way. Like we've created a community of over 125,000 people on different platforms. Our videos have been seen 116 million times across the world. So I
Wow.
think when you look at that, and just the love I get, like sometimes walking in the street and like in places that I would never expect, people will come up to me and say, like, I love what you're doing. It's so important that you're doing this. I have a hard time like expressing my gratitude like in the moment. So I think for me it was just important to find a way to give back to the fans that have, you know this would not exist without the fans liking our videos, enjoying them, watching them, asking for more. So we went to a printer shop. We printed out like 80, 90 pictures, I'm sure, because I think we had like 5 pictures of Harvey Pinard. We had like 5 pictures of Justin Barron. At some point, like after the second day, we're like, okay, let's just print. And seeing the reactions from fans that like, were expecting to just talk to us, and then they get a picture. I think it's super nice, and hopefully we'll be doing much more. We already have a few things that we've kept for like a big event, some
Mhm.
really nice stuff. So hopefully we'll be giving that away too. And you know what, the players, we tell them that it's for the fans too, so they appreciate that. So it's also for the players to see that, you know, we're genuinely giving back to the fans too, and we're not you know, taking them and selling them like some people do.
Yeah, that's the thing too. Like when you're doing this whole thing, and I'm very much on the learning curve still, even doing this for a few years now. But when you're making it about not just yourself and your growth and what you can get out of the whole experience of being a content creator, that's where the value, and like we were just kind of talking about, when you're involving the fans as much as you are, that's where it's genuine. Like, you know, there's a good purpose behind it. You're serving a bigger purpose at the same time as having a great time making all this content.
Exactly, exactly. Like I don't, you know, there's a lot of people that do, let's say, street interviews, and I don't necessarily like it because I find that, you know, there's not much interaction between that interviewer and the person. They're just there to, like, I call it sucking up the content. You know,
Mm.
the goal is for us not to suck up the content. The goal is for us obviously to be interacting and shooting back and questioning what the person is saying at the same time, and having a real, you know, interaction. People, you know, learning a little bit about us, and we learn a bit about them within that interaction. So um, I think the sense of community, I think within the Habs fan base, it's something that's been lost, I think, like over the last few years. I'd have to say that, like, as diehard of a Habs fan I've been, um, around 2017, like let's say when they traded away PK, I kind of dropped out for a bit, started watching more soccer. But then
Mm.
when quarantine came around, I kind of got back into it, and it's because all these Habs fans were, you know, tweeting. You know, Habs Twitter is huge. Like, everyone was tweeting, everyone was doing live streams because everyone was at home, and I think it helped, like, tie the knots a bit back of this fan base again, and it led to, you know, now fans are outside on the street and they want to have fun, and I think it takes a particular environment for that too. I think you know, it takes it took us leaving the era of Marc Bergevin for us to kind of rejoice a little bit.
Well, change was in order, right? I mean, you guys have already run into Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton on the street, so
Yeah, many
that's
many
pretty
times,
cool.
even not on camera. So they're
Is
a
that
bit
right?
they're a bit camera shy now.
They know better, right? Like they figured it out. Okay,
They realized what happened the first time.
like, you know, you guys go right for it though. So like, who you guys trading for? Who you guys trading for? Like, you know, like you
Like,
just
if you were a fan, that's exactly the question you want to ask them. So even if they won't answer it, you might as well, just for the fun of it, you know.
yeah, like even the answer they give you, like they'll they kind of realize it's tongue in cheek. Like you guys aren't really
Yeah.
expecting to get an answer, right?
Like, sure, I could have asked them, "Oh, sir, Mr. Gordon, what do you think about the recent trades?" That's not the point of us doing it. We'll leave the media do that kind of stuff, but for us, it's like we're gonna kind of make jokes, we're gonna make stupid questions, and it'll be funny.
And that's the point. Like it's supposed to be entertainment. Like that's what you guys are doing, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
I want to ask you about the current Canadians, and actually, because we're just before the draft here, I did see you pop up, and basically what I saw you say, and a lot of Habs fans are kind of sort of on this train right now. Um, we talked about this last weekend as well, but who should we draft at number 5? So we're going to get right into some Montreal questions here about the current Canadians and where they're at in the rebuild, and who you think they should take at number 5. Alex, I'm very curious, but I have a feeling who it could be, but I'll let you say it.
Listen, Andrew, I will reiterate this, and I'm gonna be looking directly at the camera, and I'm gonna be saying it again. Matvei Michkov, I will personally come get you from Russia, bring you home, because it's time that the Montreal Canadiens have a superstar offensive talent. I don't want to see us picking any defender. We have lots of them. We can trade for one. That's fine. But what you're getting here is literally the Russian Bedard. And I cannot stress this enough. If you look at his stats and if you look at everything that he's done throughout his career, you would look at him and you would look at Ovechkin as a rookie and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And you might even say that Michkov is outperforming him. So now, for it to become a discussion about, oh, but what about Russia? Well, you know what? There hasn't been a single Russian player in the history of the NHL. This even includes during, you know, the wars in the past, that has ever refused to come to play in the NHL. So I don't know why particularly people are in a fuss about it now. I get that it's a different circumstance, but you could just not pass up on Matvei Michkov. Like I would I would sincerely be shocked if they passed on him, and if they did, I would be disappointed. I won't lie.
Okay, so very much so the case in terms of who you think they should pick. You're sold.
Like to the point where I think that he might be gone even before our pick. And that
Hmm.
might actually disappoint me even more. Like if we manage to get a guy of his caliber at 5, it's like we got really lucky. So if we're to, you know, go outside of that and go for something safer, like the Canadians have played it safe for 30 years now. We're good. Like if this one draft pick goes bad, like I said, no one can ever blame Kent Hughes for making that pick, in my opinion. I would never blame him for it because it was very high risk, but it's also very high reward. Well, actually, I don't even view it as high risk. That's my issue. I don't view it as such high of a risk. But I'd like to think that they know what's going on. Babrov was a scout, I think, or his father is a scout with the CSK, with the team that Michkov works with.
Yes.
So I'd like to think that he'll have as much information as possible. And if they don't pick him, there's probably a good reason for it. But if I end up seeing Michkov end up playing for another team in 3 years down the line, well, I'm going to point the finger and say, well, you guys didn't really know when you should have. So,
Yeah, it's interesting, man. It's really, really interesting right now because we haven't had the opportunity to drop, and it's amazing because this is the fifth round pick or fifth overall pick we're talking about, and he might be available. So, you know, do you think there's any chance? I mean, I was talking with my pal Shane last week about um, San Jose picking at number 4, and he thinks that based on where they're at in their rebuild, they haven't fully committed to it yet, but they could be the team to take Michkov at number 4 because we feel like we feel like it's going to go Bedard, Fantilli, and either Carlson or Will Smith for the top 3. So who do you think the biggest variable is? Is it Columbus or is it San Jose to take Michkov?
well, a lot of people are saying it's San Jose. Um, and you know what? It helps us in the sense that we don't have to make that choice anymore. And I would personally be very happy with Will Smith or Leo Carlson, obviously.
Hmm.
Um, but I tend to view Michkov as, I think if there were no issues with Russia, I think this guy would be going third. And I think that Columbus would make a point of picking him at third. But I think that because they want to play it safer and they have the choice to pick amongst 3 other great talents, they're not going to pick Michkov. San Jose, they might think about it because when it'll come down to it, I think they might think to themselves like, how could we pass up on it? And I'm sure the Canadians will think the same thing too, and hopefully they will.
Yeah, I mean they're going to have to do, and they are doing their research, right, to make sure that they're taking the best player available and considering all the factors involved. But if they don't, like, let's just say he does drop past 5 or he gets selected before the Canadians are able to take him. Who else do you like, in terms of, like, we have Dvorsky, Zach Benson, Ryan Leonard available. I'm not even mentioning Reinbacher at this point because I just don't think we can take a defenseman. I don't believe any rumors that we're going to take him. I don't believe it.
Listen, that's the only thing that's being talked about right now, and that's what's worrying me so much. I haven't heard about Benz. I've heard about Dvorsky, sure, but I think it's Grant McCagg that was saying that, and
Yeah.
he likes to
Mhm.
say a lot of different things. But you know what? He was right last time. He was right. So
Yes.
we'll give it. He might shock us again. Um, but I think that like any of the American-born players or the Canadian-born players, I think those are good picks so far. Like Reinbacher, the thing is, it's like, are we really gonna pick fifth overall a right-handed defenseman from Austria? It's like, is that like, and I don't know what league he's playing in exactly. Like, what kind of level of competition is there? Like, it would be really out there. It would be really out there. And people will say, oh, well, we picked a goaltender, Carey Price at 5. Well, Carey Price was Carey Price. You understand? Like he was playing on Team Canada. Like he was lighting it up. Like you knew about him before the draft started. It wasn't a complete shock. It was just a shock that the Canadians picked him that early. So
Right.
I think we just need an offensive superstar. I don't want to see them pick someone that's, a good two-way forward. We need someone that's going to put pucks in the back of the net. That was arguably our biggest issue this year, was putting pucks in the back of the net. Even with all the star power that we had, once one of them get injured, especially Caulfield, the goals dried up very, very quickly. So we need an offensive superstar.
Now, what do you think about? I watched him last night a little bit, but on the Winnipeg Ice, Zach Benson or Ryan Leonard, because I was leaning towards Ryan Leonard myself. Kind of reminded me of like a younger, more skilled Josh Anderson, like guy who likes to drive the net. So, what if we end up with Benson Leonard? Like, are there any players that you would be content with, even if we don't get that offensive superstar that you really want?
Look, me personally, I'll be completely honest. I haven't watched Benson and Leonard all too much because I've been focused on Michkov, and even Michkov, to a certain extent. Like I'm not a guy that knows the prospects off by heart. I'm not a guy that knows that watches all the prospects, and
Fair enough.
uh,
Yeah.
but from what I've seen, it's like, if we get another Josh Anderson type player like Benson, let's say, it could definitely help with a little bit more production, for sure, for sure. Like we just need someone who's going to put pucks in the back of the net, and there's no other simple. That's the simplest way we could put it, because we have a lot of pieces. Oh well, he's big and he can, he could do things that are very important. But the most important thing for me is putting pucks in the back of the net. So
That's why we show up, right? We want to see goals.
we need to see goals. Like, like I think that the fans have been very tolerant with what's happened over the last 2 years, like, given the context of everything. But I have to say that a lot of fans that I speak to going into this season, um, I don't think they're going to put up with the same thing. And me personally, I don't think I'll put up with the same thing, because you look at other teams in our division getting stronger, and we've kind of taken a step back this year with the trading and everything. Maybe it just wasn't possible, and probably so, because some of the players were just untradeable and not for the right reasons.
Hmm.
But I think we expect to see some improvement, and not just jumping to top 10. I think we want to see like consistent play, and that's something that's lacked a lot.
Right. Now, in terms of changes or trades, roster improvements for this coming season, because for me, like, I'm thinking ahead to 24, 2024, 2025, like not this season, but next season is when I'm really going to
Yeah,
start to expect things to take a turn for the better. And we're going to take the Canadiens a lot more seriously. That's what I feel like this next season will be like. Maybe we'll have a chance at a wild card spot. But what do you think needs to happen between now and next season in order to improve the roster so that we may see a better product than the last couple of years here?
yeah, and it's not so simple to solve, because you've got guys, let's say like Hoffman, Armia, that are, as Martin St. Louis put it, passengers. Say what you want, but they've played like passengers. And then let's say Armia, he'll go to the World Championships and light it up. So I have nothing. There's nothing much we could do about those guys. And the problem is, it's not like Harvey Pinard where he can go from the fourth to the first line. Those guys can never play on the fourth line, even though, based on the play, a lot of the guys on the fourth line should be playing on the third, but you can't move those guys. So those are guys that I feel like right now are weighing down the Canadiens a little bit, because they don't seem to fit with the culture that's Marty's trying to build. I'm sure
Mhm.
Marty's been pretty frustrated too with their level of play, and I'm sure he was with Dadonov throughout the season. That's why he got traded. But um, with that dead weight, if they manage to find a way to trade them somewhere else, and even for, in my opinion, it's almost worth it to trade them for practically nothing, because at least you'll be able to instill really the values that you've been trying to promote. And you also give a chance for one of the prospects that are going to be coming up. A lot of guys are going to be playing Laval Rocket this year. I will be there. I'm very excited for the Laval Rocket this year. You got Josh Roy coming in. You've got a lot of prospects that are going to start playing their first games for the Habs. And if you've got that space offensively to give them the opportunity to get a few games in, get a few reps in, like, where we could be in business. We could be really in business. I think the Canadiens are not as bad as people think they are. I think we saw it at the beginning of last season that these guys can win some games. These guys can seriously win some games and put up a good fight. But the injuries started piling up. You lose 9 in a row. You can't really do anything about that. But then when our team was completely depleted to the point where we were having two to three AHL lines, they were stacking up wins towards the end of the season. So this team has a lot of fight in them. And if you've got a full healthy roster that has good competition and that you aren't playing favorites because, oh, well, this guy needs to play because we need to up his trade value, well, you're going to see some good results. I'm really confident that the Canadiens can make a wild card spot in that scenario.
Yeah, to me, like in terms of them making a wild card spot, it seems like Armia and Hoffman, yeah, they're going to be there. And Hoffman, thankfully, only has one more year left in his contract, so that's a positive.
C'est long.
But
C'est long.
can you interpret that for those that don't understand French, though?
C'est long it's long.
It's long. Okay. I'm like, I need to know what that means. So, and I was born in Point Claire, actually, which is interesting because
Really?
I was raised here in Niagara and that's where we've stayed. But all of our family is still back where you are in the motherland, my friend. So, in the homeland. So, but in terms of next season and just the roster construction, I'm expecting those trades that didn't happen, maybe like, your Joel Edmondson trade, for example. I don't know about Josh, though. I'm still not sure what to do with Josh Anderson because of, the value he still holds and the fact that they weren't able to get enough value for him in order to trade him. So therefore, I don't know what to do with guys like Josh Anderson, but what do you make of a player like him and his future with the Canadiens? Where's he at?
For me, the most important thing, the guy needs to be a Montreal Canadien. And we have to kind of have a definition of that going into it. And whether or not people like the skill that he has or what he brings to the team, the guy is a Montreal Canadien. Like I've spoken to him different times. I've spoken to, some of his family members. At some point, we managed to interview his cousin. And he told us how relieved he was that after the trade deadline, he was still a Montreal Canadien. It was very, very important to him. It made him very, very nervous, actually. So I think that, and you saw him after the press conference, like how animated he was about, the reporters after game 82. The next day, people are already talking about trading him, how much it hurt him personally. So when I see a guy like that, that's willing to put his body on the line for the team, he's fought for his players, he's fought for his teammates. Like, you can't trade away a guy like that unless it's something really special in return. So I'd like to see him continue being a Canadian. He's still got 4 or 5 years on his contract. He's still very young. He's like 25, 26 years old. Like, the guy hasn't even hit his prime. And I think that it's worth giving him the time to reach his potential because given the right circumstances, given the right set of players, we've seen him do great things. So I think it's just about building a good roster around a guy like that because, he's a guy that wants to be here. And I think that's super important. Like, can some of these guys on the roster say that, they want to be here? I have doubts about that. Harvey Pinard, say whatever you want about his skill, say whatever you want about whatever. The guy wants to play for the Montreal Canadiens, and it shows. So that's how the Canadiens have succeeded thus far. We never had the best teams. So
yeah, it's the passion, right? It's like when the Canadiens get in the playoffs, something just happens. Like they have this bit of magic that sort of is able to be created. That's kind of the magic of being a Montreal fan, is just seeing how they genuinely feed off of their fans and want to run through a brick wall for them. And like, that's kind of what we did Habs Tonight with Dale Weiss for a while he was still really involved in his doing his thing. And that's what he said, like, he was a fourth line guy most of his career, but when you stepped out on that ice in the playoffs with the towels going and the Bell Center faithful behind you, there's nothing like it in the world. There's no other place in the world you want to play. And I cannot wait until we have playoff hockey back at the Bell Center and to see interviews from Habs Fan TV outside the Bell Center for playoff games. It's going to be next level, right?
We're going to need to hire security or something. Like, it's going to go too crazy. Like, I will genuinely hire security. It's going to be too insane. I got to protect my cameraman.
Of course. No, that's wise of you to do so.
Yeah,
that's very wise of you to do so. Well, I'm looking forward to next season, and certainly seeing I think it's been nice to be part of the rebuild, knowing every step of where we're at and knowing that we're still going in the right direction. And this draft is a big one for us as Habs fans in knowing who we're going to take. And you know what? When it comes to your Michkov, desire to see him in Montreal, one of the only things that has me encouraged that it very well could happen is that we've already seen the boldness from Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton to go against the grain and take Uri Slavkovsky, for example, even though maybe he still is going to be the best player regardless, and it still was the right pick. I don't think most fans were still expecting it though. So do you think that that kind of gives you a hint that they aren't afraid if they feel it's best to pick Michkov?
Listen, everything I've read so far, and this has even been since, since the end of the season, has indicated to me that they're not willing to make that pick, or that they're not interested in drafting any Russian. And maybe they're doing it on good information. But I'd like to think that when they get on that draft floor and they see him still available, I'd like to think that there's going to be a light that goes on and they're going to say, there's no way. Like, there's no way that we leave this guy go to, Arizona. There's no way. Like, it has to be us. It has to be us to do it. And I think it's going to be. I think the Canadiens won't know who they're picking until the last day, just like they did last time. But I feel like they last time around they kind of knew, but they just didn't want to say it.
Of
They
course.
all were very comfortable with like their pick, but they just didn't want to say it because they didn't want to start a frenzy. You know, so
Yeah, because what was out there, as far as we knew, was that their indications are that they're going to take Shane Wright, and they very much didn't. So, and
no,
and three other teams didn't.
I was sincerely like once I saw that they never really made a huge comment about like who they were picking, I just knew for a fact they were going to pick Slavkovsky. I just knew it. Like, there's no way that they're going to keep a lid on all this just to like go with the pick that we already thought they were going to pick. Like, I always knew that there was going to be something else going on. So, but
Well,
yeah, let's hope that this year like at the end of the day, I'm not a draft specialist. You're not a draft specialist. We're
mhm,
guys that watch hockey and we think we know hockey and we know all the politics around it. So we give the
true.
benefit of the doubt for sure, and I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt with Slavkovsky too. Um, but eventually, 3-4 years down the line, we'll have our answers. So I think that'll tell us a lot about how our rebuild is going. Like right now, we're in like a fun phase. You know, everything's good. Things are happening. They're making moves. Um, but I think like 4 or 5 years down the line, and the Canadiens haven't made the playoffs. Let's say I think you'll see the expectations come down on them, and I think they know that too.
Yeah, I mean, like it seems almost like I really like Kent Hughes, and I like Jeff Gorton too. Um, I'm just wondering, like, is it too good to be true? Like they're just going to bring out their 25th cup to this franchise, And I really like their approach. They really seem to be calm and even keel. They're not over like Mark Bergevin. We learned was very very emotional and got personal with his negotiations with players. So that's where for me, I think we have not just one but possibly two cool heads leading the charge, and then also the staff. I mean, you saw the draft video last year when they decided they were going to take Slavkovsky. You
Mhm.
just see the cohesive unity between the staff. Do you not sense that?
I do, but some people watching that video said, well, people that didn't like the Slavkovsky pick say, oh, well, you see, Bobrov just convinced them off like a 1 minute speech about how he's a workhorse and how he's done it all like no other teenager. And they said,
Carries the
well, that
mail.
was too emotional. So listen, you'll never keep anyone happy. Everyone will interpret things in a different way, but I think that they're actively trying to build something here that hasn't been seen in a long time. Like, to think that Jeff Gordon had to come to the Canadians and build an analytics department from the ground up tells you how far behind we were, and we didn't even know it. So you've got other teams like, let's say, Toronto. Say whatever you want about their team and how they are completely incapable in the playoffs of getting it together. They have the analytics, they have all the best staff that Dubas put in there, but they just didn't have the on ice product. We had the on ice product, but we just didn't have the things in the background that can really bring us to the next level. So hopefully that groundwork is going to be placed because it's long overdue, long overdue.
Yeah, they made the right changes, I think, and it's clear so far because we
Yeah.
are seeing very quickly this whole thing turn over, and you've got a captain in Nick Suzuki leading the charge now, a young 23, the youngest captain in Montreal Canadiens history. Alex, like, I
Hmm.
mean, I like what I'm seeing in terms of they're not afraid to turn the page, and I think they really have, right?
Yeah, you'd have to say that. I mean, you would think that that year where we finished dead last was like the worst thing that could have ever happened, but I consider it really a blessing in disguise,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because I think it was time from the Canadiens to move on from Marc Bergevin. His trades were all right. Some you'll disagree with. Some of them were just completely shocking. Um, but you'd have to say that 9 years as a general manager, at some point you got to turn the page. And they couldn't have picked, I think, two guys better positioned for it. Like I see this now, and you see this with other GM candidates. Like let's say for the Flames or for Pittsburgh, it's either all ex players or ex managers. And people, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So I feel like we finally broke that cycle of going back to ex players or going back to ex managers who, worked somewhat well here, or going back to ex coaches. Like, thank God we broke that curse. Like, thank God we broke that cycle,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like it now freed us from all the expectations and traditions of the Canadiens organization that have happened for a long time and did not work for 30 years. It's been 30 years that we saw Claude Julien come like 2 3 times here. We saw, Michel Therrien come twice here. Like, what were people expecting differently when you had situations like that? So you bring in a sports agent, you bring in Jeff Gordon, who was in the executives of the Boston Bruins and the New York Rangers, who have built teams that are consistently showing up in the playoffs. You couldn't have asked for a better duo. So with everything that Mark Bergevin, like let's say, we even saw him in California, and
Yeah.
he didn't even want to be seen with a Canadiens jersey anymore, to that point that like he was so like insulted with what happened. But like, on the one hand, it's like, Mark, like you still, and whatever complaints I have about Mark Bergevin, he could, raise his middle finger to me and say, "Hey, well, I brought you to the Stanley Cup final, guys. So you guys better watch it." And I will take that. I'll take that. I completely understand it. But at the same time, it's unacceptable to have 9 years of a rebuild only work in the last year. At that point, it's not a rebuild. It's like you rebuilt unsuccessfully for 8 years, and then 1 year you got it right. That's the way I view it. So, but credit to him. He's the only one that did it. We've had some smart people here, but he's the only one that brought us to the Stanley Cup final and gave us that opportunity.
Yeah, and he also got us to the conference. Well, helped get us to the conference final in 2014, where Carey Price went down in the conference final against the Rangers. So really, I mean that's like the one point in his tenure and Carey Price's career specifically where we can't help but say, "What if?" We can't help it.
Yeah,
So that would
that's
have been,
haunting.
yeah, like you know
Extremely haunting.
that one's really tough, right? Because that could have been our opportunity right there, and we got close. That was a really close. We knocked off Boston in round two there, so that was a heck of a run. That was one of our favorite moments, I think, from Bergevin's era as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the thing is, what we've kind of come to understand about Carey Price is that he actually has had these knee injuries all his life. That's the way I kind of understood it when he used to talk about it in the press conferences. So people will blame that Kreider injury, and I do too. I think, like, sure, you might have like an injury there, but like that really like it made it 10 times worse. So, and I think Carey was never the same after that. His regular season performances were correct, as we say in French, but otherwise, when he came to the playoffs, though, no one had any doubts. So ask. I would like for people to ask the Toronto Maple Leafs, because I think they would much rather have a very average season performance from their goaltender and have an extremely amazing performance from their goaltender come the playoffs. I think they would take that trade almost every day.
Yeah, I mean, having a good goaltender in the playoffs, to me, we saw it, right? So we saw it for at least a few runs from Carey specifically. And the only unfortunate part was we leaned too much on him, as we know. That's the story of his whole career in terms of like the players he was surrounded with. But it certainly makes a difference. And there's no question that having a goaltender that can help be that guy that you just don't have any worries about, and that was Carey, though, because of his approach to the game. But let me ask you that maybe then, who do you see as the future, or is it too soon to say still who the future netminder of the Canadiens will be? Because I don't think we're going to have a superstar back there like we did. So
Yeah, I think the number one netminder for the Canadiens for the years to come, I don't think we've seen him yet. I think maybe it could be Montembeault. It really could be. I want to see this year how he progresses. The guy is still very, very young. He's 26 years old, I think. For a goaltender, that's pretty young still. Like some guys don't even have their breakout years till they're 27, 30, Like then at 30 you realize, oh shit, they're really good. But I think we have to keep an eye on him because he could turn out to be if not a number one, he could turn out to be a very solid backup goaltender. But the Canadiens have made some mistakes when it's come to goaltenders. They let go of Lindgren. Lindgren, pretty much starts for the Capitals now. Sometimes you've got Fucali that's doing well too. So they let go of those guys in favor of, let's say, Primo, who we've all been convinced is like the next coming of Carey Price. But what is that really the case? I'm less convinced of it now. Like let's say if you look at his performances for the Laval Rocket, he has like a 9-10 save percentage, sure, but is he improving? And if you look at the last 4 seasons, it's pretty much stayed at around 9-10, 9-11. So I don't know. I think that the next netminder of the Canadiens is still waiting to come, and it's a very important piece of the rebuild. Like, let's not kid ourselves. Like, we need a good goalie behind us, especially with the kind of hockey that we're going to be playing, especially offensively minded hockey. But is it worth like trading? I've seen a lot of people say, let's trade the first Florida pick for, Askarov, or let's say Swayman. And I don't know. I don't know if that's the right option at this point. Like it's a heavy price to pay, in my opinion.
yeah, pun intended kind of there too. Yeah, it's a tough one, man. I just thought I'd ask you while I had you, Kiergan. And I haven't seen enough of him myself, but there's been a lot of noise around Jacob Dobeš from Czechia. So I haven't seen enough to say that I know, but what I did watch of him so far in terms of just, highlights on YouTube, because unfortunately that's the only research we can do sometimes. He did look pretty athletic in there, like in terms of movement, post to post and all that kind of stuff. He reminded me of Carey a little bit in terms of athleticism, but I don't have much more to go on than that. So I'm not sure, but he's a big boy, 6'5", Alex. So have you seen enough from him, or are you still going to say this is the year to watch and find out?
Listen, I think like every time we look at a goaltender, our first thing out of our mouths is going to be to say, oh, you know what? He kind of reminds me of Carey Price. I think it's something like it's a comfort thing for the Habs fans to say that, So, multiple will have a good game. Oh my God, I feel like I see Carey Price. Allen will have a good game. I feel like I see Carey Price. But I think we just like objectively, you need to look at, like let's say even Primo, like he was a 7th round pick. Like to put the weight of a future Hall of Famer and to say, you know what, you're going to be the next coming of a future Hall of Famer who was picked in the 1st round. It's very harsh, and I would say the same thing with Dobeš. We'll see how they perform with the Laval Rocket. I think that's going to be the biggest indicator. They're probably going to have a good, healthy competition there. So I think that'll tell us a lot. If Primo can't stand up to the challenge, well, it'll tell us a lot about him too.
Yep, it will, and they have signed him to a 3-year extension, Primo. So it's up to him now to prove why it's either his crease or it's his crease to lose. We're going to see pretty quickly, I think. So
yeah, we will.
But that being Yeah, that being said, man, I just want to thank you for jumping on with me today. And we got to dive into some Habs content, of course, but you guys have done a pretty outstanding job in terms of just following your passion. And if you guys haven't yet, follow Habs Fan TV on all platforms. They're on Twitter, they're on Instagram, they're on TikTok, they're on YouTube, of course. And, I don't know if there's anywhere else that I'm missing, but you guys certainly have put yourselves out there and are really doing a good service for Habs fans. And it's a lot of fun to watch, man.
Well, thanks so much, and I appreciate you inviting me to come on. And more importantly, like I have to say, like when I started off this channel, like I tended to look up to certain channels that were already there. Habs Tonight was one of them. So I have to say that you guys kind of laid the groundwork for you know us kind of blossoming in the way that we did. You guys kind of were already on the wave of having the Habs community online on YouTube. So big credit to you guys.
Well, thanks a lot, man. You never know who watched. Like all that time we had with Dale for 9 months was certainly when we were at our I guess most popular, if you will, and we were just fortunate to be along for the ride. But it did seem like during the pandemic there was a really good opportunity to bring everybody online and connect, and we didn't feel as alone and isolated anymore. So that for you to say that and for you guys to be doing your thing is amazing. Like that's a gift. So to hear that for me anyway, just being part of that channel and then continuing on my own channel here. So, but thanks, man. I appreciate that. You never know who is watching. So that's encouraging to hear that.
Everyone does. Everyone does. Trust me.
No, that's great. That's awesome, man. Well, thanks so much, Alex. And again, you can follow Alex and Cedric on Habs Fan TV. They are everywhere, as I heard Eric Engels say, actually, also when he ran into you guys in California. You were interviewing Trevor Zegras not that long ago, right outside of his car. You guys are everywhere doing your thing, and we appreciate you. So all the best, Alex. And I look forward to meeting you guys outside the Bell Center after a game real soon, my friend.
We'll be there any night.
That's Alex from Habs Fan TV, guys. Thanks so much for watching. If you like the channel, you know what buttons to push. So I thank you for being here, and we thank Alex for being here as well. We'll see you guys real soon.